Hi, my name is Nils Naujoks and I'm a professional sim racer for G2 Esports. Overall, there's huge debate in sim racing whether or not hardware can make you faster. I don't think in particular if you have the talent, the hardware will make you shine or put you at the back of the field. In the past 2 decades, sim racing equipment has made a major leap. Of course, we were taking deeper takes onto pedals, racing wheels, PCs and of course monitors as well. In particular, the monitor in sim racing is like one of the few connections you have to the car. Everything is perceived visually in the first place, and therefore it's really important to have high frame rates, low response rates of the monitor, because this gives you a competitive advantage in the end and makes it easier for you to perceive what the car is doing.
Between the two of them, the inside of Coates, Barker gets too heavily involved, and that's Whitehead and Coates.
Hello everybody and welcome to the second weekend of the MSL FastR Touring Car eSeries with Power Max Racing powered by VRRC. We are at Donington Park for our next two races, which promise to be just as fascinating, perhaps if not more so, than we had at Brands Hatch on the Indy circuit a week ago, because not only can we anticipate the usual elbows out, no holes barred touring car racing, but this weekend we factor in success ballast as well, which will be the same across qualifying and the two races. And Mike Epps, as the championship leader, comes here larded up with 75 kilos, and that, certainly from what we've seen in practice, means that he's not going to be at the sharp end of the grid. Certainly for race one, might be able to luck into a reverse grid on that top 12. We'll wait and see when we get to the end of the first 20-minute plus one lap race. We've had practice. Qualifying coming up very shortly. Two races, and as I say, the second has this semi-reverse grid, the top 12 around this just under 2 mile circuit. David Addison and Andy McEwan are virtually trackside, 2 metres apart, of course. And Andy, this promises to be a really good pair of races around a circuit that always generates good touring car action.
Yeah, afternoon David, afternoon everyone. I couldn't agree more. This is one of my favourite racetracks for touring car racing specifically. There's something about this layout with its sort of long, sweeping, medium and high speed corners that produces very close racing, but unlike perhaps at the Brands Hatch Indy circuit where we raced a week ago, there are a few more overtaking opportunities, and some of them perhaps a little bit more obvious than others. So yeah, I think the two races today will be fascinating, and that success ballast that you mentioned is definitely going to play a role, because this is a hard circuit to carry that ballast out. It's very hilly, very undulating, and so I think that we might well see a bit of a shake-up of the order today.
Now, what we've also had since you were with us a week ago is also a little bit of a shake-up of the results, because you might remember just how frantic the two Brands Hatch races were, and Mike Epps comes here as the championship leader from Jack Keithley and then Dave Marshall. But quite a few drivers did cop for penalties for incidents rather than for track limits. We had, for example, Isaac Smith being excluded from the second race for causing incidents, and we had differing levels of time penalties either for the number of or the severity of accidents. So you'll see on that graphic the number of drivers with that red lozenge next to their name with a points penalty. It's pretty much most. It's certainly over half the field. So Andy Ringland, as the clerk of the course, along with Rich Hayden as the race director, spent much of the week reviewing all the evidence to make sure that the result was fair, and that anybody that had gone a bit over the top knew exactly why. So it might be a bit calmer this weekend. Where's the wood that I can touch in saying that? We'll find out very shortly. But it was, I think, Thursday lunchtime-ish when results came through, confirmed with all of the evidence reviewed, all of the penalties. And let's face it, Andy, there was a lot to look at from Brands.
Yeah, there were one or two moments, weren't there, where I think the combination of a very, very evenly matched grid and a very tight circuit did sort of lead to a couple of bits of avoidable contact. But, you know, that's first day back at school, isn't it? Everyone's keen to prove a point, and this fascinating mix that we've got of the sim racers versus the real racers, I think I touched on this a week ago. The sim racers really have a point to prove, that they can go up against some of the people they've maybe idolised watching racing in real touring car competition. And of course, the real racing drivers want to prove they're better than the gamers as well. So I suppose it was always to be expected that it might get a little bit physical at times.
Absolutely right. Now, we've got qualifying coming up in just over 5 minutes' time, and practice having been underway for a little while has Max Edmondson, currently the fastest, ahead of Isaac Smith and Max Goff. The significance in that is that neither Max nor Isaac carry any of the success ballast, and Max Goff, who got a penalty over the course of the Brands Hatch races, only has 9 kilos. So certainly the current evidence is that the weight is starting to affect things. Now, there's been another shuffle. Newsham has just put himself up to 3rd, but he's only got 33. That 75 kilos that Mike Epps carries is really going to hurt. 75 for Mike Epps. Let's get the housework out of the way. Jack Keithley carries 66. Dave Marshall carries 57 kilos. Rob Butler, the other race winner from Brands, lugs 48 around. Robbie Stapleford, runner-up in that second race, the teenager, he has 39. Callum Newsham, 33 kilos, and Jordan Brennan, 27. Max Berg gets 21 kilos on board. Senna Proctor, 15, and Max Goff, 9. So it's a real spread, isn't it, across those top 10 in the championship?
Yeah, of the top 4 in the points, only one of them is in the top 10 at the moment in this practice session, that being Dave Marshall, 3rd in the championship. So I know it's only practice, but they've been out there for quite a while, so you'd expect this to be fairly indicative, actually, of the pace that we can expect from the drivers. And yeah, it definitely looks like that ballast is affecting things.
So Donington Park today. Next week, we just nip down the road, Andy, don't we, to Walton Park for the Island Bend configuration. Then across to Snetterton the following weekend on the 300 layout, up to Knock Hill, which is always as hot and sunny as ever in February, followed by the Silverstone National Circuit on the 6th of March and the International a week later, and then we finish on the 20th of March on the Grand Prix circuit at Brands Hatch, as befits a touring car championship ending at Brands Hatch, and no doubt it's going to be a really good showdown. So we've got the Donington Park National Circuit as our venue for this weekend. And Max Edmondson, it is, as we say, that currently tops the times. Max, 15-year-old, he's been a karter since the age of 7 and a Rotax junior competitor in 2019 in the British Championship. So he's well versed in competition and was going very, very nicely indeed in the early part of practice. Now, let's have a quick look at what the Donington Park National Circuit is all about. Ryan Elliott is your guide.
Hi guys, welcome back for round 2 of the Power Max Racing eSeries. My name is Ryan Elliott, driver of the number 2 Mad for Mini Motorsport car. I'm going to take you for a quick lap at Donington National. Into turn 1, down 2 gears, clip the apex, let it run as wide as possible on a good run down the crane of curves. Quick right kink of Hollywood, then into craner, got to set yourself up well, down 1 gear, ready for old hairpin. Letting it run out as wide as possible as we make our ascent back up the hill. Go down 2 gears for McLean's, bit of a later apex, letting it run as wide as possible again, up into 5th gear, then we're down 1 for Coppice. Take a bit of the inside curb and keep it tight, and then slowly release the lock so we get a good run onto the straight. From here, we're just constantly thinking about getting ourselves ready on the brakes for possibly the hardest corner on the track. Go down 2, take a chunk of curb on the right, and then flat on exit. And that is a lap of Donington National. Hope you all enjoyed the event today.
So that is what the Donington Park National Circuit looks like on board. That is looking down through the crane of curves, down to the old hairpin. Always a really daunting part of the circuit, always a part of the circuit that you can overtake. You can also force mistakes out of people, and that's why the National Circuit has always given good racing. It's got a great flow. As Andy made the point earlier, there were lots of overtaking opportunities, like the tightening first corner of Redgate, like the crane of curves and the old hairpin, like McLean's, like Coppice. So that's everywhere around the lap. And then you get to the chicane, where if you're really brave on the brakes, you can make a move. You can't cut the chicane anymore. And of course, it's a different chicane from when Donington reopened in 1977. But even so, it remains a great place to overtake at the end of the lap. So these should be very, very competitive races indeed. And I know we're getting ahead of ourselves a bit because we've not yet got to qualifying. But again, looking at these practice times, Andy, it suggests it could be a very different look from that we had a week ago at Brands.
Yes, but still just as tight as it was at Brands Hatch. It's just different people maybe getting their moment in the spotlight, and that's exactly what the Success Ballast is supposed to achieve. It stops one driver or one or two drivers perhaps dominating over the course of the season, and I think we might start seeing this pattern emerge where one race event, a group of drivers score heavily, move themselves up the championship table, and then of course, they then have to deal with the ballast at the next round. They might start slipping back and other drivers move up in the points table, and it should all come together quite nicely come the end of the season. So still predicting race winners even, and certainly championship winners, is a little bit too difficult to start doing, specifically because of that. But one thing it is for sure, it will create exciting racing. And don't forget, everyone as well watching at home, if you've got any thoughts, any predictions, anyone that you're following, anyone who you think might have a shot at some good results out there today, get involved. If you leave comments on the Facebook or YouTube streams that you're watching, we're doing our best to monitor all of them. If there's anything you want to know, any more information you want, or any drivers that you want to try and show your support for, get in touch with us and we'll try to get round to reading as many of those messages as we can.
The fact that support is coming for what are badged as the Newsham Nutters doesn't bode well, does it? Just going back to your point about how open it is, what's going to be interesting, I think, as we start to tick off championship events, is seeing whether drivers are prepared to sacrifice a position and points rather than gaining ballast. So, do you fight for third and gain an extra 9 kilos, or do you just settle for fourth place? Qualifying underway, but as I say, it'll be interesting to see who the savvy drivers are that are thinking about the weight, thinking about the points, because obviously the weight's going to work more at certain venues, and it could be, for example, that at Alton Park, drivers are thinking, or Snetterton drivers are thinking, well, okay, let's judge our result for race 2 here against the ballast going into Knock Hill and the configuration there, if, of course, they're able to compute the points. Anyway, we'll worry about that as the championship season scrolls through. Qualifying is underway, and this is a short, sharp 15 minutes where track space, track position is going to be key, Andy.
Yes, definitely. We're seeing a few people running out of space already, aren't we, as they try to make their way around. Max Goff there got a wheel on the dirt going into McLean's. There's Dave Newsham, one of the stars of the show from Brands Hatch a week ago. Led the second race for a good period, but got involved in a little bit of argy-bargy in the final sort of quarter or so of the race as he tried to defend that race lead and ending up finishing rather further down the order than he probably should have done. But Newsham's gone well here at Donington in the past in his British Touring Car Championship days, and that Hyundai should be well suited to this circuit. It's got a good engine in it, the i20, and it is well suited to the more high speed and open circuits. So both Dave and his son Callum, who really was on the pace at Brands Hatch, wasn't he? They're both, I think, going to be up there again today.
And Dave is ballast free. That's another key point about all of this. So is that going to be in his favour? Well, we'll see as this 15-minute session scrolls through. There is son Callum, who's been one of the front runners in the mini challenge over the last 2 or 3 real world seasons. But it's going to be at the end of the next lap where we start to have a proper qualifying time. They've done an out lap, but then things will start to look slightly more grid-like. We should have 25 in total once again. Poor old Will Powell got spat out of the server just before race 2 at Brands Hatch, so he missed the race. And we also have news that Colin Martin, the PMR fabricator, who drives number 13, the Peugeot 308, he's been having dramas in the week with his steering wheel. It's been dropping out, so suddenly he goes off the road or disappears altogether. It could well be to do with the steering wheel. As we said at Brands Hatch, there are all these extra things these days for the racing driver's book of excuses. Internet disconnected, and whoops, that is mixed up, getting it all wrong out of the chicane. So he disconnected from the track, he's got back on again, but that doesn't really help, particularly for a good lap time, does it?
No, I wonder if he'll try and blame his steering wheel disconnecting as he came out of the chicane. I am no professional driver, David, but I'm fairly sure that would affect your lap times if that kind of thing were to happen. So, yeah, understandable if he ends up being a little off the pace today. Lap times coming in, by the way. Max Edmondson, who we spoke about after practice, was fastest in the practice session. 1:07.965 that he's just set in this qualifying session is within 2.5 tenths or so of his practice time. So what I'm noticing already is that they've got the tyres up to temperature a little bit quicker than they did at Brands Hatch. It does look a little warmer out there. Maybe the track temperature is working in their favour, and straight away, within the first 3 or 4 minutes of the session, we're getting down to business, and that's good for the drivers. It gives them more hot laps then, more opportunities to set a good time, whereas at Brands Hatch you did rather get the feeling one or two of them were scrabbling for tyre temperature deep into the session.
Indeed so. Well, Max Edmondson, as you say, is the fastest, but Mike Epps, then the championship leader, winner of the opening race at Brands Hatch, heads for the pit lane. He got himself to 4th despite the 75 kilos, but perhaps he feels that that's it. One shot, see where he ends up. Senna Proctor 3rd, Max Goff 2nd. Max Edmondson is currently the quicker of the Maxes, taking it to the max. So another shuffle. Who do we have? Dave Newsham up to 5th then, ahead of Dave Marshall, who was another front runner in those opening races. Senna Proctor could be one to watch though, couldn't he, here with his real world experience, of course, a British Touring Car Championship race winner for Power Max Racing. Not quite sure where Senna's going to end up for 2021, but hopefully he'll be back on the BTCC grid as he hustles on here, Andy, up towards McLean's.
Yeah, through Schwant's curve, difficult braking zone, and Katim, he, I think, has just found out how difficult it is, because off the road at, was that McLean's or Redgate? Hard
I thought
to
it was
tell.
Redgate, yeah.
Might have been Redgate, yeah, I think you're right. So that's one lap scuppered straight away. Back to Proctor, though, through Coppice Corner with his familiar number 18 on the side of the Honda Civic Type R TCR, makes his way down the exhibition straight into the chicane. He's up in the middle sector, so this looks like a good lap. Needs to find just over 0.2 of a second to snatch the pole position away from Edmondson. Bit scrappy through the chicane, rattles the curbs, and immediately bails out of the lap. So a lap that did look good enough maybe to get him on the front row, sadly goes south right at that final chicane, which you said, David, was a deceptively tricky part of the circuit to get right.
It is. I mean, the chicane has been moved in the last decade or so further back up Exhibition Straight, Starkey Straight. It's not as close to the Wheatcross Sweet as it used to be, so it's a shorter straight, and therefore you're arriving there not quite so quickly. It makes the pit straight longer, and you arrive at Redgate faster, which in turn does affect life. There is Max Edmondson, who is still the fastest, still ballast free. That said, it's not exactly a massive margin over the opposition. Just 86 thousandths at the moment ahead of Charlie Oliver, who took a fastest lap at Brands Hatch, and that's another weight-free car. Max Goff with 9 kilos is 3rd quickest. Senna Proctor with only 15 is 4th, but Mike Epps 5th with 75 kilos of lard in the car. That's pretty impressive, I reckon.
Yeah, and he is going quicker now, I think, than he did in practice too. So Mike Epps has found something, maybe tweaked the setup between practice and qualifying. That is one of the good things about this series as well. The drivers are given relatively free rein on setup, and Mike was talking about this, wasn't he, between the races at Brands Hatch. He said that his setup maybe was a bit more aggressive, which meant that he was quick at the start, but then the tyres kind of faded in the second half of the race, and it looks like he's definitely found something between practice and qualifying, because he looks a lot more competitive now than he was earlier on this afternoon. Max Goff makes his way up through McLean's, just been knocked off the front row by Charlie Oliver, which you mentioned, and that's kind of, I think, the highest up we've seen one of the Audis for a while. The Audis didn't seem to excel at Brands Hatch, but again, slightly different platform, and this higher speed, higher average speed circuit at Donington seems to be favouring them.
Yeah, the other thing that Mike Epps has to factor into qualifying, if it's like Brands Hatch, is the Amazon delivery, because qualifying was interrupted from Brands when there was a knock on the door. So if he's ordered anything overnight, the Amazon man might be delivering any second. Epps down to 6th now, because as you say, Charlie Oliver up to 2nd, again ballast free. Jordan Brennan is up into 4th, 27 kilos on that car as well. So it's interesting to see how the order shuffles, as we got Will Powell briefly going red on the timing tower, and Charlie Oliver for the pit lane. Now they're going down the hill is the Power Max Racing entry of Martin Richards, the drift start, so rear-wheel drive drifting to four-wheel drive sim racing. It's all very, very different indeed, but actually he is 11th at the moment and looking pretty competitive right now.
Yeah, and he uses this virtual reality setup, doesn't he, which I'm still itching to have a go of, and it seems to be working well for him, knocking on the door of the top 10, just 1,000th of a second behind Dave Newsham. That's the person he's trying to beat if he wants to break into those top 5 rows, but these are the drivers that in another half an hour or so we might be discussing being at the front of the grid for race 2, because remember, it's the top 12 finishers from this first race that get reversed to form the race 2 grid. So if you're starting somewhere towards the back of the top 10 or just out of it, already, I suppose, in your mind, you're kind of looking ahead to that second race as your big opportunity to score points sideways out of the chicane for Richards. Comes to the start-finish line. Is he going to improve? Well, it's no longer Dave Newsham that he's got to try and beat. It's now, because Dave Newsham has jumped into 3rd position. That is a bit more like it, not just for Dave, but for Callum as well.
Yeah, Callum Newsham is on pole position provisionally with 33 kilos of weight on board. He heads for the pit lane this time around. So Callum pits. He's got a 10th up over Max Edmondson. So the Hyundai into the pit lane. So the Newshams are first and third. Callum then, by dint of being on pole position, obviously is the best of those with weight. But he's got 3 ballast-free drivers, Edmondson, Newsham and Oliver, next in the queue. Only 6.5 minutes of this session remains as you look at number 12, Mike Epps, who is starting to drop down at the order now. He's down to 8th. He's hard at work, of course. He's raced in the real world British Touring Car Championship. We didn't really see the best of him. Mike is much better a driver than he was made to look that year, but he proved his ability on the sim by winning the first race at Brands Hatch. Let's see what the racecraft is going to be like today, because he's at the moment looking as though the 4th row, now the 5th row, is where he's going to start as Isaac Smith goes to the top of the times. Another weight-free driver.
Yes, Peugeot as well, so exactly the same machinery as Mike Epps, and yet he's going that much quicker. That's the difference that the 75 kilos of success ballast is causing. There is Charlie Oliver, meanwhile, coming out of the final chicane, and he's, of course, with some of these late, more recent improvements with the drivers, he's slipping down the order slightly. 5th place for him at the moment. One driver, David, who really could do with finding some more pace is Jack Keithley, 2nd in the championship, 9 kilos lighter than Mike Epps, and yet he languishes all the way down in 17th and nearly 9/10 of a second off pole.
Yes, there he is, heading up towards McLean's corner now. So Jack Keithley, who in fairness to him is new to this type of sim car, but it didn't seem to faze him, did it, at Brands Hatch? But you're right, the 66 kilos of weight aboard that second place in the championship Audi certainly do look like they're affecting Jack at the moment. He won't have done, I wouldn't have thought, that many miles around Donington either in a sim, because the type of events that Williams might have put him in wouldn't necessarily include Donington. So maybe there's a lot of learning going on here. They have been practicing during the week, of course, and today as well. But Jack Keithley comes across the timing line. Is that going to be an improvement for him? Well, up to 15th, but even so, there's a lot of work still to do, isn't there?
Yeah, but he did find about 1/4 of a second there, so that was, in relative terms, quite a big jump. It's just he was that far down the timing tower to start with. It hasn't made a huge difference, but 15th is indeed better than 18th. Max Edmondson, meanwhile, in 3rd place, still trying to fight to get back onto that front row. Look at how tight it is at the top, though. Smith on a 107.8, so still a couple of tenths away from what Max Edmondson did in practice, but he's only 18 1/1000ths of a second clear of Callum Newsham, who we're right on board with now, heading down into the chicane at the end of the lap. You just want to clip that first curve and not run too far over the left-hand curve, which Callum did pretty much perfectly there. That gives you a better exit onto the straight, and so you can at least start your next lap in a good way. Takes a wide line into Redgate, uses all of the pit to exit there, try and get the best line into the first corner.
Now that's all fine when you're on your own. Try and do that when it's busy. You've left the door wide open, and it could also, of course, be a drama with traffic all around you. But anyway, for the moment, it is Callum Newsham 3rd in the times, Dad Davies 4th, Max Edmondson goes back to the top. So it's been a very good qualifying session, and of course, don't forget there's a point at stake in all of this as well. The fastest lap time in the session gets a point. The gap between Edmondson and Isaac Smith is now just 3 1/1000ths of a second between the top two in the qualifying. That now changes because Charlie Oliver goes to the very top of the times ahead of Max Edmondson, and the margin now 17,000, so it's as close as ever. They're probably going to be able to squeeze at a pinch 3 laps out of the session, but Dave Newsham is hustling on, and he's just been elbowed back down to 6th, of course, with others improving their times around him.
Yeah, he's got a nice slipstream, though, from another one of the Hyundais there going into the first corner. That's Kenny Press in the Hyro Motorsports 888 car. So Press is a little bit slower than Dave, it's fair to be said, and I think that's maybe going to scupper Dave Newsham's next lap. But look at how competitive this qualifying session is. A week ago, Mike Epps set what would be the pole position time within the first 3 or 4 minutes of the session. Then, as we've documented, he could kick back and relax for the rest of the session. Well, no one is relaxing here. Just as soon as Isaac Smith took pole position, Max Edmondson snatched it away from him. Then Charlie Oliver came back up and took it away. And now we've got the top 4 cars covered by less than 4 1/100ths of a second. This really could not be much closer.
They couldn't, and it's great to see different drivers up at the pointy end. Charlie Oliver then, currently the fastest, goes across the timing line and does not improve on that lap of 67.800, but he is still good enough for pole position then. So 56 Charlie Oliver ahead of Max Edmondson. 123 Isaac Smith is currently third. He did hold the top slot for a time. Charlie Oliver, though, the Anglo-French driver, runner-up in the VRRC Formula Abarth Championship last season, he remains top. And Edmondson, Smith, Newsham Jr., Goff, Newsham Senior, Brennan, Bird, Proctor, Epps, the top 10. Now, what about Rob Butler? Winner a week ago, but he's only 11th right now. The Irishman is another one, not quite as badly as Jack Keithley, but certainly struggling. And Dave Marshall, who was another pace setter at Brands Hatch, and Dave got, a second and a fifth out of the weekend. He's also further down than you'd anticipate. So the ballast clearly does have a big effect.
Yeah, but this really does go to show what a good job Mike Epps is doing, doesn't it? Because Mike is the heaviest of the lot with 75 kilos, and yet he is quicker than Rob Butler. He's quicker than Rob Butler, and he's quicker than Jack Keithley as well. So all of the other heavy cars out there, Epps seems to be ahead of, and indeed Jack Keithley's just dropped another place there because there was an improvement, I think, for, that was Dave Marshall, wasn't it, into 13th place. Butler across the line then, 11th place at the moment. Can he get ahead of Mike Epps? The answer, unfortunately, is no, and he stays in 11th place.
Yeah, I mean, Butler, 48 kilos, Epps 75, and yet, as you say, Mike is ahead of him, doing a good job, no question about it. Jack Keithley, 16th, just ahead of Cat Impey. We saw Cat in the kitty litter earlier, of course. That's Stuart Lynes, 20th, in his familiar green and white Maximum Motorsport colours. At the foot of the times is James Merrills, but James is another driver, I think, as he gets a little bit more experience over the course of the championship with the Honda Civic Type R, will go quicker, aiming for real-world mini racing this year. Stuart Lynes up to, well, he's all over the curb at the old hairpin. He goes up through Schwantz curve towards McLean's corner now. And is this going to be an improvement? There's no traffic around him to get in the way, but I think it's going to be his last lap, isn't it? Because the flag is imminent, so these drivers will cross the line and take the checkered flag, with Max Edmondson then back onto pole position. I just wonder whether the Charlie Oliver car losing that pole time is the result of any track limit infringement, which the platform has the ability to have a look at in game.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I think that his time's disappeared rather than other people beating it, isn't
exactly.
it? So,
yes, yeah.
Max Edmondson then, I think, inheriting slightly easier pole position perhaps as a result. Craig Keeble here comes out of the old hairpin. He's still on a flying lap, because although the checkered flag is out, as long as you start the lap before the time ticks down to zero, you are allowed to complete it. So Craig Keeble, who at the moment would start only a couple of positions ahead of his teammate Jack Keithley, it's not been a great result so far in this qualifying session for these two, and they heads out of Coppice Corner. Traffic ahead, which I think is Cat Impey, isn't it, trying to get a good lap time in at the end of the session. I'm not sure Keeble's going to jump much further up the order, but again, you only have to find half a tenth or so, and actually that's a difference of 2 or maybe even 3 rows on the grid.
Yes, indeed, up towards the timing line then, but no, he's not even going to go for the line. It's going to be to pit in. So the session comes to an end, with the best time then being that of Max Edmondson. Isaac Smith, second fastest, ahead of Charlie Oliver, then Callum Newsham, with Jordan Brennan next behind. Max Goff rounds out the top 6. 7th is Dave Newsham, ahead of Senna Proctor. Mike Epps 9th, and Max Bird 10th. Bit disappointing that, because he only has 21 kilos on that car. Rob Butler, I should say, comes next, ahead of Martin Richards, with then Dave Marshall, another driver to keep an eye to, 13th. Craig Keeble is 14th, ahead of Robbie Stapleford. Jack Keithley, a long way back, is 16th. Cat Impey for 17th, ahead of Will Powell and then Miles Lacey. 20th is Ryan Elliott. 21st, Stuart Lynes. 22nd, Mick Sutton. 23rd fastest is James Merrills, ahead of Kenny Press. And then you've got Colin Martin completing the order. So that is how they will line up. And looking forward then to our first of 2 races.
Yeah, absolutely, David. Well, let's have a chat then, shall we, with our pole sitter, Max Edmondson. Max, congratulations. A really tight qualifying session there, but you came out on top with a lap time almost identical to the one you set in practice. You quite like Donington, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I did quite well in the minis here, but obviously round one in the touring cars I didn't do the best. Not the what's the word I'm looking for? Not the results I looked for, but obviously helped me with the weight for this race, so not too bad actually.
Yeah, that's a good point, isn't it? A bad weekend at Brands Hatch, okay, that's not great, but looking on the positive side, you arrive at Donington Park ballast free and clearly in good form. So how important is it for you to capitalise on that now and get a good points haul over the 2 races?
Yeah, just get as many points as I can, try to slowly climb myself back up the championship, so yeah, do as well as I can to be fair.
Well, best of luck in the race then. You're starting from the best position, but I don't think you're going to have it all your own way. It's very tight out there. Best of luck, Max.
Yes.
So Max Edmondson then on the pole position for our first race of the day. But David, can he stay there? I don't think that's going to be easy.
No, I think you're absolutely right about that. It is certainly not going to be easy. Max Edmondson then, the 15-year-old, a very experienced karter, but he is the driver that's going to start from pole, and we'll have with him at the front of the grid in 1, 2, 3, Isaac Smith. Then third on the grid, Charlie Oliver, and fourth is Callum Newsham. So that's where you start to find the weight, effectively, fourth on the grid, as the drivers get set, ready for our first race. With the grid lined up, it's going to be 20 minutes, remember, plus the regulation lap. We're about 2 minutes away from the start of the race as the drivers get themselves back onto the server, get ready to go. And the Donington National Circuit then in use. At the very back of the grid, Colin Martin, whose possible steering wheel dramas persist, the former Triple Eight and Bamboo Engineering engineer, is of course these days at Powermax Racing, one of the championship's supporters, the MSL FastR Touring Car eSeries with Powermax Racing, powered by VRRC, and it is race 3 about to get underway from Donington, with Max Edmondson then with the Peugeot 308 slotting into pole position, and he now gets himself ready for the start of the race. I say the Peugeot, it's a Volkswagen Golf, forgive me, that Max Edmondson will be behind the wheel of. Isaac Smith with him at the front, and then we are ready for the start of race 1. And let's see what progress those with the weight can make, although I suspect they're already thinking about race 2 and where they can finish in this in order to perhaps benefit on that semi-reverse grid. Top 12, remember, is the zone for the reversal, so we've got to focus on that as well as the drivers now get themselves set for this first race. We're about 1 minute away. Just quickly, therefore, Andy, pick a winner.
I should be prepared for this, shouldn't I?
Indeed.
Well, this time it's rather harder to predict, isn't it? But I do quite fancy Callum Newsham for this one, you know. He's a feisty racer and clearly has the pace to challenge Max, Isaac and Charlie in front of them. But although I sounded quite confident in predicting Callum, it could be anyone from the top 2 or 3 rows, really, couldn't it?
It could. I mean, they've all got to get around Redgate, first of all, so let's not count our chickens. And then we've got, as I say, 20 minutes plus that regulation lap at the end. Donington, always a venue that gives good racing, and it should be more of the same as we get set for the third race within this MSL FastR Touring Car eSeries with Powermax Racing, powered by VRRC. The red lights go on when the lights go out any second. Now it will be blast off, and who is going to make the best start then as the cars accelerate away down towards Redgate? It is Max Edmondson who gets the drop on Isaac Smith, who slots in behind him, and Max Edmondson covers off the inside line. Smith to the outside. Charlie Oliver tries to squeeze up on the inside to no avail. Callum Newsham gets run out wide, but Edmondson has converted pole to the race lead, but he's under huge attack as they plunge down through the Craner curves for the first time. The opposition absolutely glued to his bumper.
Yeah, both of the Newshams there, and Callum it is that goes round the outside at the old hairpin. Brilliant driving from Callum Newsham, already gaining 1 position then. So it's Edmondson, Smith, Callum Newsham, then Charlie Oliver, and Dave Newsham now moves alongside the Audi as well. Muscles his way through, but that's the wrong side of the road into McLean's, and Oliver will steer the Audi back through into 4th position. Drivers weaving around to try and get some tyre temperature up here. It's very hard to do in the early stages, but they're slowing down, David, because the safety car has been deployed. There must have been an incident somewhere around the first sector.
Indeed, I think probably the old hairpin is the answer, and we'll try and work out who it is that's gone AWOL. But the safety car, we had it in race 2 at Brands Hatch. We've got it here as well. Safety car on track. That's another reason why they can do a little bit of weaving. I was thinking that was a bit risky on the first lap, but if the safety car message had got through, well, there is Kat Impey at the back of the patch. She may well have been involved in something, although I think we've still got all 25 still going, actually, so the safety car may not be on track for very long. But Kat Impey was tapped off the road. She's back on again, but that therefore means that she's now caught the crocodile of cars, and it shouldn't be long before we can get things back underway as they turn now through the chicane up towards the line. Of course, what you don't have in this that you would in the real world is a warming up lap, so therefore you are with cold tyres for the opening lap of the race, and understandably it was a bit leery at this part of the circuit.
Yeah, exactly, especially through the Craner curves, because this being a clockwise circuit, obviously there are more right-handers than lefts, but there are actually very few proper left-handers, so you don't get as much opportunity to warm up the right-hand side tyres. It's especially the right rear that is an issue in these front-wheel drive touring cars, so the first lap or so down through the Craner curves can be fairly focusing, I would imagine. They all more or less got safely through there. It was down at the old hairpin, we believe, where Kat Impey came a cropper and ended up off the road. Someone else that didn't have a good start to the race, I noticed, was Max Bird, who started well inside the top 10. That Honda did not get going off the line. We were watching it, so you might have spotted it in the bottom right-hand corner of the split screen. That Honda was, I think it was a slow reaction, and then almost in panic, a lot of wheel spin, and so Max Bird definitely out of position. Will be looking to move forward on the restart.
Absolutely right. So the safety car comes over the line. I thought it might actually bail for the pit lane, but we're doing one more lap behind it, and all of this of course eats into the 20 minutes, so Max Edmondson effectively as the race leader is being given these, what you might argue, are extra formation laps now, so in theory tyres will be a lot warmer when he goes racing. Isaac Smith runs second, Callum Newsham is third, Charlie Oliver fourth, Dave Newsham fifth, Jordan Brennan sixth, Senna Proctor seventh, Mike Epps there, the championship leader, runs eighth, Max Goff ninth, and then it's Ryan Butler in 10th place as the cars now make the run down the hill. So as the field turns up through the old hairpin, Mike Epps working out where he can make his move on that restart, what he might be able to do. Rob Butler, I should say, in 10th place, Brands Hatch winner, so he's another one that needs to be on his toes with that car. Only with 48 kilos, it's not as heavy as many, but it just didn't hook up for Rob in that qualifying session, did it?
No, it didn't, and that means that he is in the eye of the storm, so to speak, isn't he? Right in the middle of the pack where things can go wrong. Good start that from Epps, though. One place gained at the expense of Max Goff, so neither of the Maxes got off the line. Well, two of the Maxes at least didn't get off the line particularly well. One of them did, though. That's Max Edmondson, and he's leading the field to a restart.
So safety car peels in. We are racing once more then. Max Edmondson with Isaac Smith right up behind him coming into the chicane, but Isaac was a bit curb happy there, so he's lost momentum, loses a length as well as they come over the line. Then another lap in the book. Edmondson leading, Smith is second, Callum Newsham third, Charlie Oliver is fourth under attack from Dave Newsham, and then Jordan Brennan. See how much room they're all using, way wide, diving into Redgate. Well, at Brands Hatch in race 1 it was Callum Newsham versus Jordan Brennan, now it's Dave Newsham versus Jordan, so the same Newsham-Brennan battle building up in a sense. This time it is for 5th and 6th as they head down the hill. Max Edmondson though is definitely getting away.
Oh yeah, that was a really good restart from Max, wasn't it? He did most of that work really coming through the final chicane just before the race officially went green again, and that's given him a 7/10 of a second advantage. Dave Newsham had a big look up the inside of Charlie Oliver into the old hairpin. It didn't work though, and the loss of momentum allows the door to be rather robustly opened up at McLean's corner there by Jordan Brennan, and now by Senna Proctor, who also goes past the Hyundai. So 2 places lost there from Dave Newsham, and that is typical Donington Park racing, isn't it? You go for a move, it doesn't work, and that loss of momentum, especially straight after a restart, can really cost you.
There was certainly contact, and onto the live timing page came the message about Jordan Brennan. Contact with Dave Newsham. They bounced their way over the curb, so that might be looked at. But Senna Proctor making progress then into the top 6 as the leaders come through. Max Edmondson then in the lead ahead of Isaac Smith. Callum Newsham running in 3rd spot then as the cars dive down towards Redgate. What about Mike Epps' progress? He's still there in 8th place, but Proctor now is on a charge. large, isn't he? Senna Proctor's car only has 15 kilos of weight, so he is light relative to some of those around him, and he is now having a real go against Jordan Brennan, heading down towards the old hairpin. Looks for the inside line, brakes late, will be up the curb. He's alongside, coming through the corner, forces Brennan up the curb. Jordan's got the inside for Schwant's curve, and they're going to be still like a rolling start, side by side into McLean's. The road should come to Proctor. He should get the place under braking on the inside line. Contact is made, Brennan gets fired out wide, and Mike Epps could be the beneficiary here.
Yeah, Epps is past Dave Newsham already, and there's contact there between Proctor and Brennan going into Coppice, and Epps again seizes the opportunity. You see, you don't have to have the fastest car out there to perform well in touring car racing. You've just got to be savvy and stay out of trouble. Let other people have the dramas, and then you can pick them off one by one, and that's exactly what Mike Epps is doing. He's on the inside of Brennan. He goes ahead of Brennan now into the chicane. Max Goff is also recovering. Look, in the Peugeot number 63, he too is ahead of Dave Newsham now. This race really going south here for Dave Newsham, but for Mike Epps and Senna Proctor, they are on a mission, and now they've got themselves some clean air. 5th for Proctor, 6th for Epps. Can they catch the top 4?
They need a little bit of luck, I think, in terms of some of the leading quartet holding one another up. I think Max Edmondson is building the advantage. His gap over Isaac Smith is increasing all the time. However, you're right about Epps. Certainly he's got the pace. Now, Rob Butler here down in 10th. He's the next one to have a go at Dave Newsham. And remember what happened between these two at Brands Hatch. They were glued together for much of race 2. It got a bit leery late race, and eventually, of course, it was Rob that won, and Dave Newsham wasn't terribly chuffed about all of that. Right now, though, as the field battles its way up through McLean's corner, Jack Keithley is trying to make a little bit of progress, and he goes through on the inside line there ahead of Craig Keeble. That puts him up into 13th. Max Bird, the next target, as they dive into Coppice corner. So little by little, Jack Keithley is chipping his way up the field, isn't he?
Yeah, this is a bit more like it now. 13th place for him, having started in 16th, so 3 spots gained. Again, proving that if you can just pick the right gap in the traffic, you can move forward. As though the Peugeot there, the number 61 of Martin Richards, is going the other way, isn't it? Slipping down the order. Mike Epps under pressure here from Jordan Brennan, who will be a little miffed, I think, to be behind these two. He was sort of minding his own business, really, and just ended up getting forced wide, as he does again at Redgate corner there. And unfortunately, that attempted overtake around the outside of Mike Epps was always doomed for failure. I think this is allowing Senna Proctor to pull clear, though. And Proctor, I think, more than Epps maybe, does have a chance of making more progress here.
Possibly so, and also Max Edmondson is building that gap, isn't he? Little by little, lap by lap. Edmondson, the leader, is getting away. Now Jordan Brennan makes his move back on the inside of Mike Epps. Now Mike doesn't want to give away places, but also in a heavy car, theoretically slower than those around him, he doesn't want to fight and get into trouble and risk not finishing, not scoring at all. So out of the double apex right of Coppice they come. Epps under attack because he's got Brennan and Goff and Newsham Senior right up with him. Dave Marshall and Rob Butler are trying to join the party as well. Mike Epps covers off the inside line down to the chicane, breaks late and hangs on to the place, then despite all the weight launching himself up the curb. Got a good exit from Jordan Brennan, and the move now to try to gain that place, 6th position down to Redgate, is on. He's on the outside line though. Now can he go around the outside, or can he get the undercut? He's committed to the outside, and in doing so nearly left the door open for Max Goff.
Oh, but Epps just can't get off the corners, can he? It looks as though that Peugeot's down on power. It's not. It's just that he can't accelerate off the slow corners because of those 75 kilos of success ballast, and that means he's vulnerable as soon as you come out of a tight corner, like the chicane, like Redgate corner, and like Coppice onto the back straight. So that is where Brennan's opportunity to get through will be. But Jordan, as you said, has to be careful. If he finds himself on the outside like this, he could end up losing more than one place. But that was a brilliant move. Simply drives past Epps around the outside. He does now move ahead of the championship leader. 6th place for Brennan, then 7th for Epps. 8th is Max Goff, and Dave Newsham desperately trying to work his way back up the order here. Now finds himself losing more ground. Dave Marshall goes through in the Peugeot, and there's another Peugeot right behind him in the shape of Rob Butler, who really does need to make up some ground here.
Absolutely right, but a proper touring car race, no doubt about it. Max Edmondson then is the race leader, getting away all the time. Dave Newsham, elbows out, he's on the attack, he's on the defensive as he comes through. He's got his old rival Rob Butler right up behind him as through they go. And Butler looks to the inside line down towards Redgate, brakes as late as he does. He's got the gap on the inside line, or has he? They go almost side by side into the corner. Dave Newsham just comes out ahead. The Hyundai hangs onto the place then. On the inset was Robbie Stapleford, also 24, running in 15th. keeping Martin Richards at bay. Others get squeezed up onto the grass, coming down through the crater curves. Robbie Stapleford just about gets away with all of that, and he's going to gain a place on the inside line down towards the old hairpin. That is brave stuff as he gets up on the inside line there of Miles Lacey, and he's worked. He's done it. That was really good stuff as Richards now gets all tangled up with Lacey, and he's spat onto the grass.
Yeah, don't forget, Robbie Stapleford was second in the reverse grid race at Donington Park, so I'm not quite sure what he's doing this far down the order. Probably not enjoying himself half as much as we're enjoying watching him, because this is a fantastic battle for us, but he would much rather be inside the points, which he very much isn't at the moment. Neither is Martin Richards, but at least he's staying out of trouble, tagging along on the back of that little group. At the front of the field, this is a different picture than the one we had 5 or so minutes ago, isn't it? Isaac Smith has reeled in Max Edmondson. David, you said that Max was getting away, but maybe it's mistakes like that that have allowed the Peugeot of Smith to reel him in.
Yes, you're absolutely right. The gap has come right down. Max Edmondson has been reeled in again by Isaac Smith, who looked to the inside line, but that was never really on, going down towards the old hairpin. But now, certainly, Edmondson is under big pressure. Where the time has gone to, we haven't seen. But Isaac Smith, I was going to say, is sitting on his bumper, but actually up towards McLean's, he's lost a lane for 2, brings some of it back under braking, and it does make one feel as though it was an error by Edmondson that's cost him the time. Now that he's regrouping, can he stretch the advantage out again? Let's see, it'll be a lap or 2 maybe before we get the clear answer to all of that. But certainly behind, Callum Newsham is under attack again from Charlie Oliver, and it's not the only battle, is it? Because have a look at this, further down the field, 88 there, James Merrill's making a bit of progress. He's up into 15th place from the back full row of the grid.
Yeah, and Craig Keeble got up the inside of Martin Richards to take that place away, and Richards now gets assaulted by Miles Lacey as the leaders go into Redgate corner side by side. Isaac Smith with his nose ahead, but on the outside line, can he go right round the outside of the Golf? They lean on each other on the exit. This is a really tricky part of the circuit to run door to door, but that's exactly what they're trying to do. Smith in the Peugeot, Edmondson in the Golf. Edmondson will have the inside line for the old hairpin. He should stay ahead on the way in, but on the exit, you'd expect the Peugeot to have the better run. Out of the corner, in the bottom right hand corner of your screen, you can see that battle continue as Martin Richards tries to find a way back ahead of the robust Miles Lacey.
And through on the inside line then for the race lead, Isaac Smith goes through at McLean's corner. Now, we had 2 reports of the cars making contact on that previous lap. Not only have they squabbled, not only have they traded places, but they are being caught. Look how much closer Callum Newsham is. 33 kilos of weight on his car, the 2 ahead of ballast free. But not only is Newsham under attack from Oliver, but he is certainly closer to the race leaders. And if they carry on squabbling like this, with what have we got, 6 3/4 minutes and a lap still to go, Callum Newsham could yet be on for better than 3rd place. Depends to a degree whether Smith has got the pace to pull away from Edmondson or whether Max can fight back. But look, it's virtually now 4 for the race lead as they round Redgate once again.
Yeah, Callum Newsham looking strong here, isn't he? He has, of course, got to overcome the fact that I tipped him to win the race, which almost certainly means that something will go wrong for him before the end. But at the moment, he's avoided the curse and he is running well. And as you said, definitely catching the top 2, who for the time being have sort of left each other alone. Now, is this a sign that Smith is actually quicker than Edmondson and might be able to get away? Or has Max simply realised exactly what you were saying, David, that they're holding each other up? The 2 cars behind are now becoming a more significant threat, and maybe it's time for these 2 to work together. Callum Newsham wide in the background. Look, and this could be Charlie Oliver's chance to move through. Oliver, who started 3rd ahead of Callum Newsham, is back into 3rd ahead of Callum Newsham, but for how long?
Yeah, because Callum lines up on the inside line. Have a look at the small picture on the bottom right as other battles rage on around the circuit, including Martin Richards trying to gain ground. 3rd and 4th through the chicane. Oliver just comes out ahead of Newsham, but they're going to hold themselves up. This plays into the hands of the leaders. Look, the leading pair getting away. Oliver and Newsham falling back. So Callum has got to get on with this. He's got to get through and he's got to try and go after those ahead. Senna Proctor, though, looking very racy indeed in 5th, and he could be thrown a lifeline. Now have a look at Edmondson. He's all over the back of the race leader, Isaac Smith here. He's all over him like the proverbial cheap suit. They're side by side for 3rd, but not only has Edmondson now got the pace to get back into the race lead, but a battle would enable 3rd and 4th to close up. So certainly the leading 4 positions are by no means resolved. On board with Newsham, he's busy fighting for 3rd, and Max Edmondson, with a retirement and a 21st at Brands Hatch, is absolutely determined here to try and score a win if he can.
Well, this is exactly what I said to him before the race, isn't it? He has to capitalise. He's got no success ballast. He's got a quick car. He clearly gets on well with this Donington Park National Circuit. this is his chance to buy back into this championship battle, whilst others, like Epps and Keithley, for example, are not set to score highly, or in Keithley's case, perhaps at all. Well, he's 13th at the moment, certainly not scoring many points back there. Across the line then they go, Isaac Smith and Max Edmondson into the final 5 minutes plus 1 lap of the race. And does Edmondson have a go into Redgate? No, takes a nice wide sweeping line in, and look at the extra speed he can carry through the apex as a result. Runs a bit wide over the curb, but that is the way to do it, isn't it? The momentum is key here at Donington. If you can't outbrake someone, try to outfox them on the exit of the corner.
Isaac Smith, an experienced real-world racer from the Mini Challenge, in which he was the rookie champion last year, an 8th overall. He's the VRRC Fiesta champion. He was a driver in the Mini eSeries last year as well, so he knows about the real world, he knows about the virtual world of racing, but he is under massive pressure right now from Max Edmondson. They both run wide out of McLean's, and there's a huge battle pack as well going on, as you can see in midfield. It's sort of 7th and back, isn't it? Mike Epps at the head of that queue, kind of at the head of it, under attack from Max Goff, who's all over him, and you've also got the cars of Max Bird and Dave Newsham queuing up behind as the race leaders then come down towards the chicane once again. Max Edmondson not challenging there, and interestingly, for 3rd and 4th, I reckon that Newsham's just falling away a little bit now from Charlie Oliver. That situation seems, for the moment, to have resolved itself, doesn't it, as the leaders could not be closer.
Oh, is this a chance for Edmondson? No, not quite into Redgate. Yeah, you're absolutely right, and we saw this from Callum at Brands Hatch, didn't we? Started strong and then faded in the second half of the race. That's exactly what's happening to Mike Epps, by the way. I think Mike Epps, carrying that weight, has burnt through his tyres a bit more quickly than those around him, because remember, only, 6 or 7 minutes ago, he and Senna Proctor were nose to tail, and now there's about 6 seconds between them, and Proctor up in 5th, Epps struggling to hang on to 7th. So I think Epps maybe he's running out of tyres, and he's about to lose a place to Max Bird. I think Max Bird had just taken 7th, yes, at the top of the screen. I caught a glimpse of Max, the Honda, ahead of the Peugeot. Mike Epps, I think, is going to struggle to hang on now over the final few minutes.
And also Max Edmondson has run wide and therefore lost a little bit more ground to Isaac Smith. So right now we're looking at this battle between Jack Keithley and Dave Newsham. Jack Keithley has chipped his way into the top 10, hoping to shed weight for the next brace of races, not for the next subsequent race, but the next event, in other words, in a week's time, because you carry the weight for the 2 races at the one venue. But Jack Keithley's heavier car, 66 kilos aboard it, keeping Dave Newsham at bay, and Mike Epps is 8th and could fall further down before the very end. As you look at him coming down towards the chicane now, 2 minutes and a lap to go. It is still Isaac Smith in the lead, 4 tenths up on Max Edmondson. That's Dave Newsham clobbering the curb. Rob Butler still stuck behind him in 12th place then as they come over the timing line once again, and Rob Butler trying to defend now because he's got himself up past Dave Newsham as they come past the pits, heading down now into the braking zone for the right-hander Dave Newsham. It is at Redgate that's dropping place after place. Dave Marshall is past him, and also Robbie Stapleford goes through.
Yeah, Marshall, Butler and Stapleford, remember, are 3rd, 4th and 5th in the championship, and right now the 2 Peugeots would make up the front row for race 2, and Robbie Stapleford will be left on the outside looking in. So this is a really significant battle now to make it to the front of the reversed grid and have a good chance of scoring some very important championship points later on. Back to Mike Epps, who's got Max Goff trying to go around the outside of McLean's, which was never likely to work, and Epps hangs on. They've sort of pulled away now, haven't they, from the rest of this battle pack. So for now, Epps may be looking a bit more comfortable. He could almost afford to give this, or not give this place to Max Goff, but maybe not fight it so hard, because he knows that the next group of cars are not quite as close as they were.
Well, round the outside comes Goff. They lean on each other down towards the chicane. Mike Epps will be ahead into and still ahead out of the chicane as they come then now over the line. The clock will hit 0 for the leaders at the end of this lap as the field pours out of the chicane. 1 goes for the pit lane, which had a Newsham-y feel to it. Yes, Dave Newsham for the pits. So problems may be for Dave. Perhaps he's picked up a bit of damage over the last few laps. No, I'll tell you a lie. It is a penalty. Dave Newsham then into the pit lane. It's a drive-through penalty for him. So Dave Newsham, with the platform giving him the penalty, gives up what was a fading result anyway, but it's going to throw him right down to the foot of the field.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be happy about that, because he's the one that's been losing all of the places, so quite how he ended up with a penalty, I know not. We'll try and find out after the race if we can. Here is the battle I was talking about between the 2 Peugeots. Dave Marshall ahead of Rob Butler now, which I don't think was the order the last time we saw them, so that's been a positional change, and that means that now it would be Butler on pole position for race 2 with Marshall alongside, and they are now getting away again from Robbie Stapleford. The Cupra doesn't seem to be quite as strong here, admittedly with the weight, of course, to factor in, but it doesn't seem to be quite as strong at Donington as it was at Brands Hatch. The time has ticked down to 0, though, David. We're heading into the final stages of the race, and it looks as though Isaac Smith, more or less, I say this tentatively, has this in the bag. He's got a 1 second lead now over Max Edmondson, who actually is being reeled in again by Charlie Oliver.
Just to tidy up one or two things, Dave Newsham, it was for cutting, and Colin Martin is getting a drive-through penalty for cutting as well. So effectively it's track limits. But as you say, we've got a lap to go, and Isaac Smith now 1 second to the good, 11 tenths to the good over Max Edmondson, who must be absolutely furious about this. I think he's led more laps than Isaac. It was a great battle between the two, but it is Isaac Smith ahead. That is Rob Butler down in 12th place. You get points for being in the top 15, remember. You also get a point for the fastest lap in qualifying and for the fastest race lap as well. But as the battles rage on down towards the chicane, not only is Isaac Smith in the lead, but Charlie Oliver is now all over the back of Max Edmondson as they head then up towards the line. And it is going to be a race win for Isaac Smith as he comes through victorious then ahead of Max Edmondson. Charlie Oliver bags third, fourth will go the way of Callum Newsham. Fifth should be Senna Proctor. Jordan Brennan sixth, and then Max Bird, if he can hang on in there, will be seventh. Max Epps, Max Goff, Jack Keithley to round out the top 10. So Mike Epps eighth at the end of the race, despite all of the weight on board that car. Max Goff ninth, Jack Keithley comes home for 10th place. But Isaac Smith, after 7th in the first race at Brands, and then he was disqualified for the second for driving standards, effectively, coming back into the championship very much on the front foot with that race win. More battles across the line. Miles Lacey and Will Powell go through. We've got Colin Martin set for 23rd behind Cat Impey, and already into the pit lane we'd lost Mick Sutton. So a very, very good drive indeed by Isaac Smith, who takes the race win. Max Edmondson for second place. And we'll be able to hear from our top 3 drivers very shortly. Andy's on his way down to the interview booth. Charlie Oliver bags third, Max Edmondson second, and race winner, Isaac Smith.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. Well, what a race that was. We thought it would be tight, and it certainly lived up to the billing, didn't it? But coming out on top at the end of it for his first win of the season is Isaac Smith, who joins me now. Isaac, congratulations. That was a real battle between you and Max. You just got the better of him. Where was it that you think you had the edge that counted?
Really, I just held on to the tyres at the start. Obviously, I watched Max power away into the distance at the start of the race, and I just held on to the gap there and held the tyres to be good and pulled on to him. And then towards the end, obviously he cooked the tyres at the start. I still had the pace to be able to pull away towards the end.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it was a really thought-through race, that, and that's hard to do under pressure, isn't it? Because there is that temptation when you catch someone, as you did so rapidly through the middle of the race, there's that temptation to just go for it straight away, but you sort of sat there and considered the best plan of attack, and that really worked for you.
Yeah, well, I was still even thinking about the tyres whilst I was sat behind him, because obviously, because I'm behind him, it's easy to do the same lap time as him once you're in the tow. In these cars, there is actually quite a lot of aero wash, which is quite surprising, to be honest, but yeah.
Well, you managed to overcome it all and get the race win, the third different winner in 3 races as well. It's shaping up to be a really open season. Isaac, congratulations and best of luck from 12th on the grid in race 2.
Thank you.
Isaac Smith then gets the race victory. Let's have a word with the man that he fought so hard with over the course of that race for the win, Max Edmondson. Well, Max, it wasn't quite the result I'm sure that you were hoping for, having been fastest in practice, fastest in qualifying, but still some good points there for second place.
Yeah, as Isaac said, I just worked my tyres a bit too hard, a bit too early, and then obviously I was on the back of him once he'd overtook me, just trying to get away, and then the tyres were a bit gone by then, so obviously I dropped off a bit.
You did quite well, actually, to hang on to second, didn't you, really? Because Charlie was reeling you in at the end. Had there been another lap, it might have been a different story.
If there's another lap, he probably would have overtaken me because my tyres were that bad, but apart from that, it was quite a good race, to be fair.
There was a little bit of contact, I think, between the two of you going into the last corner as well. What was your side of that?
Broke by an early break. I don't know if Charlie, don't know if he's going to go for a move or what, but...
Well, thankfully, you survived, held on to second place, and again, best of luck for the second race. Max Edmondson then a little disappointed maybe to have missed out on the race win, but still gets second place. And the man, as I said, who was charging hard at the end to try and take it away from him was Charlie Oliver. Charlie, third position, and what a battle you had with Callum Newsham.
Yeah, it was good. You know, it's just one of those things. Shame because I felt like we were quick enough to win, and we didn't quite get it done. But yeah, it wasn't bad.
Not bad at all, and certainly an improvement on Brands Hatch. We didn't get the chance to talk to you at Brands Hatch because you were in the wars a bit there, weren't you?
Yeah, again, it was a shame. Qualified 6th, but just chaos in the races. And yeah, I didn't keep myself out of trouble as much as I should have. So we didn't score anything, in fact, at Brands Hatch. So this is first points. But yeah, the thing is we got more space on this track as well, so the collisions are a little bit less frequent.
Is that something that's in your mind going into this second race then, staying out of trouble? Because now you don't have the advantage of decent track position. You've got to fight your way through from 10th on the grid. So will we see a different approach from you in this race?
Yeah, for sure. You just got to be careful. You know, if you keep it on the black stuff, then you've got a chance for some good points. If you spin round, you know, you lose 10 seconds in a race like this, which is 20 minutes. That's massive. That's maybe 4 or 5 places. So yeah, just trying to keep it clean in this one.
Well, we'll wait and see how you get on then. Congratulations on the podium though, Charlie.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Well, there you go then, David. A cracking first race of the day, and that really has set us up nicely, I think, for what should be an even more dramatic reverse grid race with some interesting names now set to appear at the front of the grid.
Yes, absolutely. And just looking at this then, Rob Butler set for pole position. Well, remember what he did at Brands Hatch in that reverse grid race, and you've got with him then now at the front of the grid 66 Dave Marshall, but that's a fairly heavy car, of course, because 66 kilos are aboard Dave Marshall's car for this race, the Peugeot 308. Second row of the grid, got 99 Jack Keithley, 57 for Dave Marshall, 66 kilos for Jack Keithley, but Jack then starting on the second row of the grid with Max Goff for company, only 9 there. So again, it's a real mix of weight now across the front, and yet again will be absolutely fascinating to see who comes out on top, indeed who survives the rigours of this 20 minutes plus 1 lap race. We're about a minute away from the race getting underway here at Donington. This second race of the Donington day of the MSL FastR Touring Car eSeries with PowerMax Racing, powered by VRRC. Grid is complete. Hopefully everybody has made it back to the server ready for this second race of the day as we get set then to go racing. The grid is formed and the drivers in a moment or two will have the lights come on, ready to count them down. Is this going to be another demon getaway by Rob Butler? Let's see, because 4, 5, 6 red lights are on. The lights will be out any second to get things underway now. And it is a good getaway by Rob Butler for sure, although Dave Marshall tries to get up alongside him from that 1-by-1 staggered grid on the run down to Redgate. Rob Butler covers off the inside line. Charlie Oliver wide on the outside, but very wide goes Max Goff and loops himself round the outside line for second place. Whoops, contact to Rob Butler and Max Goff make contact. Off the road goes Butler, and lots of other people have managed to bump into one another as well as they try to avoid all of that. But Rob Butler led into Redgate, but it is Jack Keithley ahead as they plunge downhill, and there's more mayhem, Andy, on the grass.
Yeah, that was Keeble off, I think. Jack Merrill's may have been involved, and I fear Dave Newsham was off as well. It's not been a good day for Dave, has it? But what a start for Jack Keithley, trying to hold on to the race lead from Dave Marshall, which he succeeds in doing so through Redgate Corner. Keithley then from, third on the grid with a demon first few laps. There's a car off in the background. That was Senna Proctor, and I think that was Charlie Oliver, wasn't it? Yeah, Oliver dropping down the timing tower as well. Some big names in trouble early on here, David, as we head for a safety car.
We do indeed, yes. So safety car deployed, and what that will do, of course, is bunch everybody up. No overtaking permitted. It gives them a little bit of time to get the tyre temperatures and pressures up behind the safety car as they flick out of the chicane. But Jack Keithley leads at the end of the opening lap. But yes, there was mayhem at Redgate, which therefore really triggered it all the way down the hill. And as people tried to avoid contact and therefore made contact, it was still rumbling on all the way to the old hairpin with cars off the road. So I think poor old Kat Impey may have been involved in it because she's dropped to the back of the pack. Stuart Lyons also has lost plenty of ground on that opening lap. Rob Butler did get going again by the look of it. So the safety car deployed, and as soon as possible things will be back underway as the cars now then go out of the old hairpin, looking back from the safety car. Well, Jack Keithley, what a turnaround, given that he was really struggling in qualifying, but it shows the importance, doesn't it, of that reverse grid. That is Kat Impey, who has seemingly retired to the pit lane. So poor old Kat, who is a performance driving coach and instructor by trade, ex-Formula 3 Cup racer, not having a very happy time here. You said Dave Newsham wasn't having a good day. He's down in 21st, but it's even worse for Kat.
Yeah, when it's not your day, it's really not your day, is it? But starting in the midfield as they were, that was always, I suppose, on the cards. Looks like we're getting ready for a restart here. It will be a short safety car, possibly. Jack Keithley certainly backing the field up. They come out of the chicane, he hits the accelerator, and yeah, safety car in, so we're back to racing, David.
We are indeed then. So the cars pour over the line. Is this where Jack Keithley is able to make a break over Dave Marshall, because he has got Mike Epps looking for a way past him? So the top three in the championship in a shuffled order, the top three in the race. In other words, these are the three heaviest cars. Fourth is Max Goff with only 9 kilos. Then you've got Jordan Brennan next up in fifth. Callum Newsham is sixth, ahead of Maxis Bird and Edmondson, Senna Proctor. And then the race one winner, Isaac Smith, is in 10th as they plunge downhill. Jack Keithley trying to get away as Marshall and Epps argue over second place. But actually, Marshall's going with him.
Yeah, Dave Marshall with good pace here, and he's in that slipstream. We were hearing them saying after the first race, weren't we, that the slipstream effect in these cars is quite strong, but so is the dirty air. So when you're right behind a car, as Dave Marshall is now, you're suffering from a reduction in downforce, a reduction in grip through the high-speed corners, and this is a high-speed circuit. So he'll want to try and get past Keithley as soon as he can to get into that clean air, which will also make life easier on the tyres. On board with Jordan Brennan now down the exhibition straight. That's Callum Newsham behind, looking at trying to get up the inside into the chicane, but see how deep on the brakes Brennan went there. Closes right in on Max Goff in front as they come onto the start-finish line again. They're all concertinaing back together again.
Absolutely right. Keithley, Marshall, Epps, then Goff, then Brennan, dive down towards Redgate. Yes, the line is getting longer and a big effort there on the inside line. Max Bird is a man on a mission. There's contact there, and I'm afraid that looks like possibly Newsham or Brennan that's been fired off wide. It's Jordan Brennan, isn't it? He's back on the road, but tumbles down as a consequence of all of that. So yet more for the race officials to have a look at the foot of the hill, as there the leader gets run out wide by Dave Marshall, and that brings Mike Epps up on the inside line, and Epps is about to go through into the race lead. Down to fourth goes Jack Keithley. He got roughed up well and truly touring car style there. So it is now Mike Epps from Max Goff, 1 and 2 as they come out of McLean's. A real shuffle of the order.
How does Mike Epps do it? He had nothing to do with that. They were side by side in front of him. He just laid back. It's almost like he can see into the future, can't he? He knows what's going to happen before it does happen, and through into the lead he went. But Max Goff, who is lighter than him and really fired up today, wants a good result. He's on the tail of the championship leader as they drop into the chicane. Epps then leads, and there's carnage behind, sideways for Edmondson, into the back of Callum Newsham. Jack Keithley's off the road as well. Newsham clearly has been through the gravel too, and somehow Edmondson comes out of that in fourth. I wasn't seeing things there, was I? It was Edmondson that got sideways, I think, presumably from contact behind, and somehow the Golf comes out of it not only in one piece, but still in fourth place, but that has once again shuffled the order.
It has indeed, and through all of that, Mike Epps is still there. So it's the heaviest car, championship leader coming into today, but he's got Max Goff behind him, then Dave Marshall, and then a bit of a gap back to Max Edmondson in that fourth place. Isaac Smith, now look at this, race one winner, started 12th, chipping his way up the order. He's fifth, and don't forget that it's the same weight through both races, so he is ballast free. Could he do a double here? Because the way that he's going, look, he's right there up with Edmondson, and they are catching the three leaders who are squabbling. Goff to the inside of Epps. He's going to make a move for the race lead, and he should just about come out ahead. But right now, it could be a race win for Edmondson or Smith, given the pace they've got and the weight they're carrying relative to the others.
Yeah, because the heavy cars are at the front, no one's getting away, are they? But that might now change, because Max Goff gets himself in front of Mike Epps, who tries to drive back through him, and indeed does succeed in nudging the other Peugeot wide. They're going to be three abreast across the start-finish line, because Edmondson is back in this again. On the inside is Goff, on the outside Edmondson. Edmondson in the middle of Epps and Dave Marshall. How is this going to work out? Surely contact? Yes, there is. Edmondson gets elbowed out wide by Epps, who had already had contact from Max Goff, and it's Dave Marshall that comes through into second place. What brilliant racing here, and this is all playing into the hands, as you said, of some of the drivers that were front runners in the earlier race. Isaac Smith up into third place now, ahead of Mike Epps.
Smith could well be on for another win here. As I say, he could do the double. When we get a chance to pause for breath, just remind me how Jack Keithley ended up in 21st. I know he got roughed up a little bit, but 21st, that was some roughing up. So there is Smith on the back of Marshall. So Max Goff leads the way, 9 kilos. So he is carrying weight, but not that much. Part of this is going to depend, I think, on how long it takes Smith to get past Marshall, isn't it? Because if he's stuck there for a while behind that Lardia car, he's going to lose a lot of time to Max Goff. But if he can make a move pretty quickly here, either at the chicane or into Redgate, and get on with the job, he's got a chance of going after the leader, as Edmondson breaks it way too late going into the chicane and will lose a place to Jordan Brennan. Yep, Jordan goes 5th.
Well, Jordan had just let Edmondson through, actually. Those two are teammates, remember, both racing for the Riggs Esport racing team, and I think Edmondson had been given that place by Brennan and then overshot the chicane. So Brennan, after his charitable deed, ends up getting that 6th place back again and immediately gets onto the tail of Callum Newsham. Jack Keithley, you were asking about, he was involved in the Edmondson-related drama at the chicane. I think he was the one that Edmondson got sort of spun into the back of, so that's why he lost time, clearly lost a lot more time than those that were also involved in that incident. Dare I say it, Max Goff is getting away here, nearly 7 tenths to the good now over Isaac Smith in second and Dave Marshall third. A Peugeot 1, 2, 3, 4 at the moment, with Mike Epps 4th, Callum Newsham 5th and Jordan Brennan in 6th position. But Isaac Smith in second place, as we said, should have the pace here to go after Max Goff. This will be a fascinating second half of the race.
You dare say Max Goff is getting away, but I would take issue with that. I reckon the gap's coming down a little bit, because Isaac Smith is well fired up, as here Robbie Stapleford and Charlie Oliver fight for 9th. Stapleford just ahead, but Oliver's got the inside line down towards the chicane, and so Charlie Oliver, recovering, goes back through on the inside line. He was another one in strife at the first corner of the race, having been 3rd in race 1. So, fastest lap of the race done by Isaac Smith. He's brought the gap down from 7 tenths to 4 tenths. It is game on here for a double for Isaac Smith. In 3rd place, Dave Marshall. Mike Epps runs 4th. Callum Newsham, upholding family, on a 5th. Then it's Brennan, Edmondson, Proctor, Oliver and Stapleford. Out of all of this, who else do we see trying to make progress? Rob Butler is from pole position, still mired in only 14th place after his dramas at the first corner. But of course there might be quite a bit to look at post-race from that and from the run through the Craner curves. Right now though, Isaac Smith is going after Goff. The gap is coming down little by little, and with half the race still to go, plus a lap, he could very definitely be on for another win here.
As I said, Isaac Smith is definitely not letting Max Goff get away.
That's what you said. I remember it well.
And the lead battle is well and truly on. Someone who is not on, I'm afraid, is Miles Lacey. That's between McLean's and Coppice, I think, isn't it? And rejoins alongside Stuart Lyons. This should be good fun. Stuart Lyons at the back of the field. He's getting a bit of love on the live chat, I've just noticed. So Stuart getting some TV time here, down in 21st place now, but that is at least 1 position higher than he was at the start of the lap.
So that's progress. Max Goff still leading, but the gap is a 1/5 of a second, and in fact he's almost overlapping as they head down the hill there, because an effort was being made by Isaac Smith to try to find a way through. We're talking hundredths of a second now. Further back, Jordan Brennan is on the back of Max Edmondson as they plunge into the old hairpin. We've got, 10 minutes and counting of the race to go, plus that regulation lap at the end, and Isaac Smith is now the race leader. So he's done it, he's gone through on the run up towards McLean's corner. Smith is through, also up into second place now is Dave Marshall. So Max Goff's brief time in the race lead is over. He's down to 3rd, although still with a little bit of real estate between himself and Mike Epps, who in turn has got the Edmondson and Brennan battle raging on behind him as they now come down towards the chicane. But this is Isaac Smith's chance now to Scarpa, isn't it? He's ballast free and he's been chased by a car that's got 57 kilos of weight on board. This could be a relatively easy 9 minutes for Isaac Smith if he can get his head down.
Yeah, you rather sense that Isaac's biggest opposition would be Max Goff, because Goff is the other ballast-free car in this lead group, and so the fact that he's not only got past him but got a heavier car between the two of them now as well, that should rather play into the hands of the race 1 winner. We haven't yet had a 2-time race winner in the first 3 races, so it could be that Isaac Smith, of all people, is the one to break that pattern. Teammates together here, then coming down into the old hairpin. Jordan Brennan is back behind Max Edmondson now. Whether he let him through again or whether Max was able to force way through, I don't know. But either way, the two Riggs Esport Racing Team drivers are in the same order, at least that they were in the previous race, with Edmondson doing better than Brennan. And Edmondson now rather fancying his chances, I think, of taking the, what's that, 4th place away from Mike Epps, and that could be significant because if Edmondson has championship aspirations, beating Mike Epps is definitely something he'll have to do.
Absolutely right, as they drop down towards the chicane then here. So Edmondson all over the back of Epps, but Mike goes defensive, hangs onto the place as they flick their way now through the chicane. Epps goes wide, and the lighter car of Max Edmondson should get the drive out of the corner. Yes, he does. He's on the outside line. Edmondson noses in front and has got the job done well before the braking zone for Redgate corner. So good effort that. Now Charlie Oliver, who had a fastest lap at Brands Hatch, has done it again here. Remember, that's another driver recovering. Charlie Oliver up into 9th spot. But Max Edmondson now, if he can keep Epps behind him, and he should with a lighter car be able to get away, he in turn could also be on for another podium here. But look at Smith, he's over a second clear up front now.
Yeah, he is marching away now, isn't he? Whereas Dave Marshall can't really shake off Max Goff, so it's the fight for second that looks the most likely to change, and then also this one for 4th between Edmondson, Epps and Brennan. Further back, Martin Richards is getting involved with Kenny Press here. We haven't seen much of Kenny over tonight's races, but he is currently holding 16th place. Or is he? Because the Peugeot drags alongside, coming out of the old hairpin. A superior run there out of the turn for Martin Richards, and he now takes that 16th place away. Miles Lacey is not far behind them. Miles has just overtaken both Stuart Lyons and Jack Merrills on the previous lap, who I think have been off the road perhaps. So Lacey starting to regroup again after that grassy moment a lap or two ago.
So the cars then coming out of the right-hander of Coppice down towards the chicane. Good battles raging on towards the rear of the pack as Mike Epps has to think about going defensive there into Redgate, but coming under renewed attack, isn't he, now from Jordan Brennan as they drop downhill once again. So a good effort this by Jordan Brennan, but you see Mike Epps, by going defensive, Andy, losing touch with those ahead now.
Yeah, well, Edmondson's already got past Epps somewhere then, hasn't he? Because remember I said the two teammates were together a moment ago. They're now split by the Peugeot. So Epps, again, probably that weight is starting to affect the tyre weight. You really lean on that left front tyre a lot here at Donington. And if you're carrying 75 kilos, you're going to lean on it harder than those that are carrying less. And you can see there just can't carry the mid-corner speed that Jordan Brennan can. Brennan on the outside line still has a chance of getting the place. No, not into Coppice. And now he has to watch out because the always exciting Callum Newsham is right behind them, and so too Charlie Oliver. What a recovery drive this is from Charlie. I didn't take a note of where he dropped to after that first corner off, but it must have been outside of the points, and here he is 8th place with possibly still a shot at the top 5.
Yeah, don't rule him out yet. We're just under 6 minutes of the race still to go. So Isaac Smith then comes across the timing line, still clearing the race lead. 12 laps are in the book, and he's 1.2 seconds to the good over Dave Marshall as there is an effort being made on the inside line. Newsham versus Brennan. Jordan stays ahead. Now, these two, of course, had some good fights at Brands Hatch, but as they are squabbling, so Charlie Oliver is inching up onto the back of them. Down the hill they plunge once again. You've got to take your hat off, though, to Isaac Smith, hasn't you? Because this has been a really impressive drive from 12th on the grid. I know he's got no weight and those around him have, but even so, he has done everything absolutely right with 5 minutes to go. Now, what about Oliver? There's the chance for at least 3 more places to be gained here if he can keep out of trouble.
Yeah, well, yes, which he hasn't been able to do so far in this race, but despite that early off, he seems to have made pretty easy work of working his way back into the points, now into the top 10 as well. And here he is, tries to get the overlap on Callum Newsham, a better exit out of Coppice for the Audi, which is on the inside of the Hyundai now, going down into the final chicane. 4 different brands of car, 5 if you factor in Senna Proctor, who's also catching this group fairly rapidly. Brilliant racing here, brilliant variety, and a brilliant overtake there from Charlie Oliver. That better exit from Coppice meant he got the inside line for the chicane and gets ahead of Callum Newsham, who's thinking about fighting back into Redgate. Charlie knows that, defends the inside line, and this just takes some of the pressure now off of Jordan Brennan in front, who perhaps, along with Mike Epps, can try and focus on getting away from these two.
But Isaac Smith still clear in the race lead. 1.3 seconds to the good over Dave Marshall. Charlie Oliver then now up into 7th place, trying to hustle on and see what else can be done about gaining ground. Further back in the pack, Jack Keithley 15th, so his yo-yo day, he's climbing up again, and of course that has just put him into the points, hasn't it? A solitary point for 15th place, but it could be crucial come the end of the Brands Hatch weekend at the end of March, as down through the old hairpin there goes 888 Kenny Press. Great enthusiast for all of this, loves his sim racing, and he in turn is having a good battle with James Merrills there in the MSL car. Nose to tail they run up towards McLean's. That's only, in quotes, for 18th place, but it's as fierce a fight as any, as Epps then comes through the chicane, looking strong now.
Oh yeah, but he's slow off the exit of the corner again, isn't he? Sir Jordan Brennan once more using the lighter car to come off the corner quicker and just drives past Mike Epps. But Mike is only ever losing one position at a time. He knows when to pick his battles, doesn't he? Rather than really fighting tooth and nail there with Brennan, which could have let Oliver and Newsham have a go at him too. He just let Brennan go, slotted back into the racing line, and as a result, for the time being at least, keeps the Audi behind. On board with Epps, looking back through the rear window at the menacing Audi of Charlie Oliver as it carries much more speed through the old hairpin, gets in the slipstream. Now, which way is he going to go? The left-hand side is open, but that's the outside line for McLean's. He doesn't want that, he wants the inside. He can't get there. Epps is late enough on the brakes, bit of a tap in the tail from the Audi, and that backs Charlie Oliver up into Callum Newsham, who carries all the speed in the world off the turn, but again is only shown the outside line. That becomes the inside, maybe on the exit of Coppice, but Oliver again hangs on, contact with Mike Epps there. This is getting physical.
It is indeed, and Callum Newsham is about to buy into this because he's on the outside line of Oliver down towards the chicane, gains a place, two wheels on the dirt, loses traction, loses control, loses the line, loses a place because Oliver will pounce coming up with the momentum, and Charlie Oliver, one down and one up, goes through, but Senna Proctor is also going to take advantage, so Callum Newsham gained a place, loses two, and out of all of that squabbling, look at the gap that Epps has suddenly bought himself, because having been under massive pressure at Coppice, he's away and gone.
No matter how much trouble Mike Epps seems to be in, he always seems to come out of it smelling of roses, doesn't he? He's got clear air all around him now, and only 2 minutes plus 1 lap to go. I do think that Oliver, Proctor and Newsham have the pace to catch him again, though, so that might not be the last bit of defensive driving that Epps has to do. Oliver is already starting to bridge the gap, isn't he? But so far, everything they've thrown at him, he's had more than an answer for. Reminder, at the front of the field, still Isaac Smith leading from Dave Marshall's second, Max Goffin third, dropping back a bit now. And Max Edmondson isn't really reeling those two in. He's inching towards Max Goff, but by half a tenth or a tenth a lap, and he's still 1.2 seconds back. So the likelihood of there being many changes within the top 4 or 5 perhaps is rather slim. Further back, it is anyone's guess. Oliver already looked back on the tail of Epps.
Yes, how things change in a lap, don't they? So for the top 6, Charlie Oliver, can he gain more ground? I said he had the chance of gaining 3 places. Well, that's 2 of them done. The other one is going to be Epps if he can do it. There's a minute plus a lap still to go in this race, and Isaac Smith leads the way. Interesting, as you see there, look, just diving down towards Redgate on the inside line, Senna Proctor trying to get past Callum Newsham. He will do it at Hollywood. Just, I think, on the inside line, the road should come to Senna. Yeah, he's gone through. Just to finish the point about Isaac Smith, he's worked his way into the lead, but he's never gone storming off into the distance, has he? 1.5 seconds is the margin, almost as though he's driving within himself here, Andy, keeping out of trouble and just making sure he maintains an advantage.
Yeah, Isaac Smith driving within himself, Callum Newsham driving into Senna Proctor's Honda there, and that didn't really help his exit speed from the corner. Oliver around the outside of Epps, and there's a hip and shoulder, and Oliver's in the gravel, and that is another rather more robust defensive move from Mike Epps, but a successful one nonetheless. Just your point about Isaac Smith, this is exactly what he did in the first race. We'll get to that in a second because there's more contact. The back of that Peugeot is going to resemble the front end of an Audi more than the rear end of a Peugeot by the end of the race. The amount of times Charlie Oliver's hit it, goes to the outside through the chicane, still can't get by, and I think maybe a bit of frustration starting to creep in here from Charlie Oliver, who knows that he had the pace for another podium in this race and can see that that isn't going to happen. Right, I will now finish my point about Isaac Smith. He told me, didn't he, after race 1, that he really was thinking about managing the tyres in the first race, didn't go any harder than he had to, sat behind Max Edmondson for a time to save the tyres. And I think that's what he's doing now. He knows he's got a second and a bit in hand. He doesn't need to go any harder. You don't score more points for winning the race by 5 seconds than you do for winning it by 1 second. So just stroking it home and looking after the tyres, I think.
I think you might be right, and it is working well for him. It's going to bring him into the mix for the championship, isn't it? Although Dave Marshall here looking good for second, Max Goff third, Oliver possibly for 6th before the very end. He has not given up, and there's a bit of a brush with Epps there as they came out of McLean's corner heading into Coppice this time, but He's going to go through on the inside. Job done. Charlie Oliver goes through them. But Isaac Smith up front still looking strong as far as the race win is concerned. Marshall and Goff for the podium, but Charlie Oliver has done it then, up into top 6. He's raced well today, hasn't he, Charlie Oliver, in that yellow Audi?
Yeah, this has been one of my picks for driver of the day. I'd have to say, although Mike Epps isn't done with him yet, carried a lot more speed off the chicane. For some reason, that's been where he's been weak, really, up until this point. Tries to get up the inside, he's on the grass going into Redgate. Mike Epps is getting his elbows out here, a bit more than I expected him to, honestly. He's got this championship lead to try and defend, yes, but he also knows that he's at a natural pace disadvantage because of that success ballast. So, I'm a bit surprised at how feisty he was getting with Charlie Oliver. Didn't manage to get through though. Oliver now should be good in 6th. And what that's done, look, is it's brought Senna Proctor and Callum Newsham onto the tail of Mike Epps. 3 either current or former BTCC drivers, depending on what Senna Proctor's plans are for this year, all together with less than a lap to go.
Absolutely right, but up front Isaac Smith is going to do the double, and he was perhaps very much an outsider at the start of the day, but with great pace he's got on with the job outside of the front row for the first race and up from 12th on the grid for race 2. Isaac Smith then comes through the clock at 0. He will make his way up towards the timing line, and Isaac Smith takes 2 from 2 at Donington then in the MSL FastR Touring Car eSeries with Power Max Racing, powered by VRRC. It is a win for Isaac Smith ahead of Dave Marshall 2nd, Max Goff 3rd, Max Edmondson 4th, Jordan Brennan 5th, then Charlie Oliver 6th ahead of Mike Epps, Senna Proctor, Callum Newsham and Robbie Stapleford. That's Craig Keeble heading for 14th place. And the last point will go to Jack Keithley behind him. Really frustrating day for Jack after his 2 seconds at, his 2/3 at Brands Hatch. But great day for Isaac Smith. Now, in terms of a driver of the day, with those 2 race wins, surely he puts himself at the top of the list. But there are others like Mike Epps for doing what he's done with all of the weight on board that might go onto that list as well. What about Max Edmondson? Although he didn't win, it was certainly competitive all day. And Max Goff, another driver that was there or thereabouts. And Charlie Oliver for some good racecraft. So plenty of drivers to ponder for driver of the day. Let's just quickly look at the provisional results then. Isaac Smith takes the flag first ahead of Dave Marshall and then Max Goff. 4th goes to Max Edmondson ahead of Jordan Brennan and Charlie Oliver, with Mike Epps, Senna Proctor, Callum Newsham and Robbie Stapleford rounding out the top 10. The last point scorers, Dave Newsham, Rob Butler, Will Powell, Craig Keeble and Jack Keithley. He's down in 15th ahead of Miles Lacey, and then Martin Richards. James Merrills takes 18th ahead of Kenny Press, with Mick Sutton in 20th. And Stuart Lyons, I think, did get to the end in 21st, but he was the last of those that did take the checkered flag, others having retired from the race earlier. So, Isaac Smith, what a day. 2 out of 2. Now, we've got 1 or 2 penalties, I think, being looked at by the race officials. So that, just like Brands Hatch, is a provisional result, but things will be confirmed in the next couple of days, and we'll have the championship situation to analyse in a week's time when we turn our attention to the races at Alton Park. But the top 3 drivers then will make their way shortly to the interview room. Andy McEwan is on his way there as well, and Max Goff taking 3rd spot, Dave Marshall 2nd, but Isaac Smith a double winner at Donington.
Yeah, thank you, David. Well, I've got the top 3 drivers with me now. We'll start, as we did last time, with our race winner. And as it was last time, it's Isaac Smith who gets the race victory. But Isaac, coming through from 12th on the grid was never going to be easy. Did you honestly expect that a race win was on the cards?
Definitely not. Going through train of curves, I thought I was going on that one, to be honest. It was free wide and I was the sandwich in the middle, so I luckily made it out of it and managed to pull through for the win. Dave.
Yeah, I mean, it's always perilous, isn't it, starting in the midfield like you were, but if you can survive those early laps, I suppose, then you can start picking them off, and the further towards the front you get, the heavier and, in theory, therefore slower the cars in front of you become.
Well, that was exactly it, but even with the weight, Dave was incredibly fast. He kept me on my toes all the way to the end. I was mightily impressed by him, to be honest.
Well, you might have been mightily impressed with him, but we are all mightily impressed with you. The first person to win more than one race, the first person, therefore, of course, to win 2 races in one day. This does set you up well now for a championship bid, but now it's your turn to carry the success ballast next time at Alton.
Yeah, of course. Obviously, we're going to be setting the car up around it and try and make it as fast as possible, but we'll see what happens. I can't thank my team, Riggs Esports, and Riggs of themselves, and Heating Shop.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm sure they are grateful for you as well for giving them a couple of really good results here today. Congratulations, Isaac.
Thank you.
Well, chasing him hard there towards the end of the race, at least in second position, was Dave Marshall. And Dave, you needed that, didn't you, really? 11th place in the first race, limited amount of points towards your championship bid. You needed to capitalise on that good grid position for race 2.
Yeah, I mean, first race was always going to be difficult with the weight. I didn't quite put the quali lap in that maybe I should have done. But you know what? I said after the first race for all, it wasn't where I wanted to be. It was mega race. You know, we must have been wheel to wheel for about 8 laps. So fair play to all the boys out around us in race 1. But yeah, I sort of positioned myself ready for race 2. I had my target on 11th place, and I knew, you know, let's chance it and drop back a position to try and have the push in race 2, because felt like I had good pace, especially towards the end. Even though the weight's a huge hindrance at the start, once the tyres start to go off, you can sort of hang on a bit more with the weight. So yeah, we managed to push Isaac, and Max definitely didn't let off the pace either.
That's interesting, actually, something you just said there about the tyre wear, because you would assume, wouldn't you, that carrying extra ballast would actually hurt you the longer you run. It would affect the tyre wear, but actually, because everyone else's tyres are wearing too, it seems like the later in the race you get, the more competitive you can be.
Yeah, it's exactly that. You know, I think everyone's sort of in the same position where your front left tyre's down to 70 or 60% wear. But when everyone's in that boat, all the cars are actually relatively even. I mean, obviously the straight line performance is, you know, not as good, but yeah, you've got to make the best of a bad job, and I think we've come away with a good point haul there today.
Moving forward from here then, going to Alton Park, you might now shed a little bit of weight, and that's a good track to be light at, isn't it?
I don't know. I think if my calculations are correct during the race, I think I'm winning the championship at the moment. So
right.
I think I've actually gained maximum weight, which, you know, I was fair used to last season. And to be fair, once you get the sort of over half weight category, the car feels quite similar. It's just slow down the straight. So it's incredibly hard when you try to defend against drivers who are very fast down the straights, and, you know, they can break probably a car length later on the brake. So that's what we've got to look out for. But hopefully Alton Park won't hurt us too much regarding that side of things.
There you go. If you want latest, up-to-the-date points calculations, don't come to Andy McEwan, that's what I'll tell you. Congratulations, Dave, on a really good result there in the second race, and if it has given you the points lead, then that sets you up really nicely moving forward.
Cheers. I could be very wrong, so I wouldn't take the word for it.
It's far more likely than I am, don't you worry. Dave Marshall then in second place. Max Goff came home in third, although I'm not sure Max has joined us, unfortunately. No sign of Max in the podium lounge, so we might not be able to have a chat with our third place finisher, but it was a solid second race for Max, and after a slightly disappointing first race, that's just what he needed. Someone we can talk to, though, is Rich Hayden, our series director, who joins me now for a quick discussion about the day's proceedings, really. Rich, thank you for taking some time to chat with us. 2 really good races today, weren't they?
Yeah, fantastic racing. Obviously, that ballast has evened things out a little bit at the top and really mixed things up. So, really chuffed for Isaac to get a couple of amazing results today. So, well done to him. Fantastic work from him there. But yeah, a great day's racing.
Yeah, definitely, and a tough field to go up against as well for someone like Isaac, and there are others out there similar to him as well, who maybe your eyes aren't immediately drawn to them as potential front runners when you look at some of the other names on the grid. So what he's done today, we really can't say enough about, can we?
Absolutely. Never write Isaac off. He's extremely quick in a simulator and also in a mini in real life as well. So yeah, I'm really chuffed for him, really pleased he's bounced back from a difficult first round.
Driver of the day is something that we've pondered on a few occasions today. I think there are quite a few candidates, aren't there? Who caught your eye today?
It's got to be Isaac. To come in with the first double wins of the series. I know we're round 2, but he's my driver of the day for sure. And he also, I don't know, sure you're aware, he had a couple of technical issues during practice as well, which means that he was down on practice time. So he's done a great job.
All the more impressive. Well, let us know, everyone watching at home, by the way, if you agree with us or if there's someone else that you think deserved the Driver of the Day award. We will keep monitoring the messages, and we'll let you know next time out if there were some other suggestions. Next time out, Richard, we go to Alton Park. Personal favourite circuit of myself and David's. I know it's our local track. It's going to be a very different challenge, isn't it, to what we've just seen at Donington Park? I mean, a more different racetrack you couldn't really hope to find.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's the Iden layout, which worked really well for us on the minis a couple of weeks ago. So I'm really looking forward to seeing these guys get out at Alton Park. It's my favourite circuit as well. So definitely looking forward to that.
I knew I liked you, Rich. Yes, looking forward to Alton Park in a week's time. Hopefully everyone else will be able to join us there as well. David, I know, is very excited about that too, and plenty to be excited about because we've had 2 race events now. Both of them have been stacked with drama, and already the championship starting to shape up quite nicely.
Indeed, Andy. Yes, while you've been talking, I was...
Round, looking forward to it.
Yes, just while Andy was talking to Rich Hayden and to our drivers, just trying to do some crude maths, I think Dave Marshall is right about him in the lead of the championship, but by only a point. So it is very, very competitive. I know it's early days, but it does illustrate how competitive a championship this is going to be, and the pendulum swinging back and forth. But would you 2 or 3 hours ago have said we're going to have, first of all, anybody win both races and put your money on that being Isaac Smith. So it's been very, very impressive indeed. That is provisionally how we look for the championship. Isaac Smith now up to 3rd behind Mike Epps, with Dave Marshall the championship leader, Jordan Brennan 4th, Callum Newsham 5th, and it is Jack Keithley 6th. Rob Butler, after a pretty bad day at the office, 7th ahead of Max Goff and Senna Proctor. Max Edmondson is in 10th. But all of that is a tad on the provisional side, seeing that there are potentially 1 or 2 further incidents that might need reviewing before the results are declared final. And we can look forward to, as we've been saying, Alton Park in just a week's time, the Island Bend circuit, so you can anticipate loads of drama down at the hairpin. So we'll see you in a week's time. Same time. It will be, of course, the 5th and 6th races in the MSL FastR Touring Car eSeries with PowerMax Racing, powered by VRRC. Dave Marshall will go there as the championship leader, and we look forward to yet more fantastic action in a week's time. For now, from Andy McEwan and David Addison, thanks for your company. We'll see you next weekend for more of the same.
Between the two of them, the inside of Coates, Barker gets too heavily involved, and that's Whitehead and Coates.